My name is Jeremy Devins, and welcome back to the Quiet Mind Astrology podcast with the weekly horoscope, what I call the Friday forecast, on Friday, January 19th, 2024. And we're going to look at the next 2 weeks ahead because the next episode in the horoscopes will be for February. We're already going to be looking at the next month. So if you're following along, you want to understand how this affects you personally, get your free Vedic birth chart. This is different than the Western chart at quietmindastrology.com, and listen for where the transits are happening for you. So when I talk about the full moon in Pushya in Cancer that's happening on January 25th, you can imagine that's happening wherever the number 4 is in your chart. When you look at the North Indian style chart, the number 4 is the sign Cancer, the 4th sign of the zodiac. So it's like that full moon is happening in that house of your chart. And if you don't know about the houses, you can go back to the episodes in the archives about houses. But that's how you make these transits more personal and learn astrology, like really learn how to apply this to your life, which starts with listening to the podcast and getting your chart, and then listening to where the transits affect you. And if you want to see these things for yourself and observe if you have visibility in your sky, you can use the night sky app or similar apps to look up and follow the astronomy yourself. So when I say the full moon's in Cancer, you'll see it actually is in Cancer. Whereas in Western astrology, it's actually referring to where it would have been 2,000 years ago. So when they say the full moon is in Cancer, they're actually, you can look with the sky, and at that point it'll probably be in Taurus, one sign back. So in Vedic astrology, we're following the sidereal zodiac, which is true to astronomy. And this week we have 3 significant transits, and then the following week we'll have 3 significant transits. So we'll talk about this week and next week here on this episode, and then February next month, or next episode. And if you want to go deeper into understanding astrology, I will be opening the Vedic Astrology Mentorship very soon. So you can join the waitlist right now at quietmindastrology.com/mentorship. And I'll be hosting a special live free workshop leading up to that. If you want to get a chance to work with me a little bit, learn some astrology, learn about yourself, that'll be coming up very soon. So more information on that. If you're subscribed to the Friday forecast, you'll hear about this. So quietmindastrology.com is where you can find all of this, the free weekly horoscopes, the free birth chart, and the waitlist for the mentorship program, which is amazing. We just graduated last year's class about a month ago, the last class, and it's an amazing group from all over the U.S. in this case, but usually we're all over the world. Amazing people all studying astrology and learning how to improve our lives. And what I talk about, improving the 4 aims of life: health, wealth, relationships, and purpose. So let's talk about how you can do that this week and next week. Starting with the first significant transit happening this week is on Saturday, January 20th. If you're watching the video, I will be showing this on the screen as well. Mercury moves from Mula nakshatra into Purva Ashada nakshatra. This is a time where you can have effective and persuasive communication in pursuing your goals. So we just passed January 17th, which is a national holiday now in the U.S. called Failure Day, where most people give up on their New Year's resolutions. So January 17th, if you given up on your New Year's resolutions, you're normal. But if you took Mindful New Year this year, you probably tuned into your intentions and can stay aligned with that. And no, it might change, but you're aligned with it in how you're being, what you're doing, and then what you have is a natural byproduct of that. So rather than saying you want to exercise more, you have more of a sense of being, a sense of clarity about what you want to focus on. And now as we crossed that threshold of the new year, we're now into this Mercury and Purva Ashada time, where if you have an intention, if you have a direction you're going, something you want in life, your communication can be more supportive to that. You can be more persuasive, more charismatic, more able to make movement on the things that matter to you and ask for help, involve others, communicate with others in a way that helps you move towards your goals. So maybe you're someone who doesn't like to set goals. Well, that too is a goal. And It's like the old ancient ascetics and yogis and things would try to get rid of desire. Oh, desire is the root of all suffering, so let's get rid of desire. Well, that's a desire. Your desire to get rid of the desire. So it's inescapable. As long as we're alive, we have a desire to eat, desire to sleep, desire to breathe, desire to live. And then we have these desires to maybe make more income, have a higher quality of health, have a better relationship, have a new home, etc. And these things may be overt, and we write it down, and we're very clear and direct. And some people are more type A like this, of I want this, I'm going for it. Like we often see with Vishaka nakshatra being strong in a chart, or Ashwini nakshatra being strong in a chart. Purvashada and Uttara also are examples of this, the undefeated, invincible ones. There are other examples. Chitra is often very focused on success in some form, or fame and success in some form. So whether you're this type, or you have these goals, or you're the type that's more go with the flow, that's more just intuitive, like Swati nakshatra, which often does have goals, but it kind of looks like it's just flowing with life, and it doesn't look like it's this drive towards it. Wherever you have these energies in your chart, and knowing yourself, knowing your chart, you know where your strengths are and what you tend towards. But either way, there's going to be some sort of goal and intention, something you desire, something you want in life. And this is a time where we can have a lot of support to move towards it, as Mercury and Mars are both here in Purva Ashada. Good time for analytical thinking and long-term planning. As I talked about recently with Saturn in Aquarius all year, a good time to be thinking progressively in life and forward thinking and what you want to innovate, create, and be more inventive in your life. And also a good time over this 9-day transit from January 20th to 29th for strategic decision making and just being more strategic and planning things out for yourself. There's a potential for overthinking or being overly critical at this time. The mental energies are quite strong with Mercury and Sagittarius. It can be quite a philosophical, heady kind of energy. So getting into your body is a very good balance to this. Doing yoga, therapeutic practices, receiving massage therapy or something like this, getting into your body, dance, music, to balance out the strong, heady, intellectual, strategic kind of energy. Then on Wednesday, January 24th, the sun is in Shravana for 13 days, and we see sun has been in Uttara Ashada. Go back to past episodes about that. And on January 24th, now it moves into Shravana. This is a focused and disciplined approach to learning and knowledge. Great time for any sort of educational pursuit or learning endeavor. I just started the next class of the Year 2 mentorship program that I lead, and it's an amazing group in there, and we're super excited and having lots of fun already. And then I'll be starting the next class of the Year 1 mentorship that I offer during this time. So whether you work with me or whatever you choose to do, great time for learning and having a focused and disciplined approach to any topic that you want to learn. And any topic, really anything. It could be anything that you're interested in, but there's a lot of support in having a grounded, practical approach to learning it. Great time for introspection and self-discovery. So if you want to do any sort of introspective practices, meditation, journaling, any sort of experience that brings you more internal awareness is great during these 13 days. Starting January 24th. There's increased receptivity to guidance and wisdom from others. Great time for working with a teacher. There can be a tendency to become overly serious or withdrawn. There can be a heaviness here, a very serious, stern kind of energy at times. Sun does not really like to be in Capricorn. In the mythology of all this, there's a whole long story I won't go into now. But in the mentorship, I talk about these mythologies and stories of the planets, which are really just stories about the astronomy in a lot of cases, which is very cool and interesting. So like we learn through stories, so that's a great way to pass down knowledge through generations. And there's a lot of stories and history around Sun and Capricorn, essentially. Surya and Shani, which rules Capricorn, Saturn, Shani. So there's a lot of tension in that connection. Short version is they don't like each other too much, and there's a lot of dissonance in that connection. So when Sun is in Capricorn, there can be some dissonance around like our boundaries, our routines, our structures, and it will pass. It's just there for a month. But the positive side of this, as I talked about in recent episodes, is a great time for being more grounded, practical, structured, setting up good boundaries for yourself, placing boundaries where you need to, setting up fences where you need to, literally and physically and metaphorically, but not getting too fenced in, too boxed in, too boundaried up where you're bound up and you're not feeling it vital and expressed like the Sun likes to be. Of course, the Sun cannot be restrained and contained, but it has this vitalizing energy that needs to be expressed in a more contained channel over this time. So any sort of container you're in, learning structure, learning environment, book you're reading, class you're taking, challenge you set up for yourself, or structure you put in place is good. Then on Thursday, January 25th, we have the full moon in Pushya in the nakshatra of Cancer. Now, this can be a culmination of emotional and personal growth over the last month, where you have some sort of clarity and realization and conclusion to the journey you've been on over the last month since the last full moon, and what you've been learning since the new moon that we had 2 weeks before this. So a good time for emotional fulfillment, doing something that's emotionally a sense of completion and closure, like time with friends, journaling, meditation, sharing your emotions with others, therapy, these kind of things. It's a time of heightened intuition and emotional awareness. Any practice that supports this, like doing sound healing, doing therapy or meditative work, can bring about really good insights, really deep insights. It's a positive energy for nurturing relationships, time with others. Pushya is a protective energy. It cares about protecting the loved ones around you and the things you value. And this can bring a potential for heightened emotions and sensitivities where you are overly emotional, reactive, and just feeling more sensitive to others, especially if this is syncing up with your menstrual cycle for the women listening, in the way that you're feeling more sensitive at this time. So I'm fortunate and grateful to live in this place in Mexico where I have almost perfect visibility almost every night now and get to observe the stars. And so many of the women I meet here feel, and they have their cycles sync up with the moon here, and feel these shifts of emotions and energy right alongside the moon. But I know living in cities and more dense areas and where you don't have the visibility and you're not as connected to nature and there's all the lights on at night, it can be more difficult to connect to these energies at times and feel in sync with nature and in the universe. So at that time, often on the full moon in big cities, I find the energies are very high and very intense. And like just going out to like a main street or a popular area of town, it's just a lot of kind of wild, looser energy that is a little intense to be around at times. So you may feel that if you go out around this time. So I personally like to just test these things out and just see what it's like. If you've never experienced it, test it out. Try going out on the full moon, see what it's like. For me, I personally like more meditative kind of stuff and stuff with closer, especially with Pushya and Cancer, to be with closer friends where there's a little more emotional intimacy and safety in that sense, where it could be silly, be funny, be deep, be serious, whatever wants to come up, but allow those waves to move through in a sort of intentional way rather than the sort of loose way that happens in cities and in big, very social areas where there's a lot of activity and it can be a bit overstimulating. But overall, full moon, a time of celebration, completion, closure, and acknowledgement of your emotional growth. And it's really wonderful to do this with a spouse or a friend, to just celebrate each other and celebrate like what you've accomplished and what you've done and where you're at. And it can be little things like, you know, you got out of bed, you got through a down period of like not wanting to do anything, and then you feel like back to your normal routine. That can be a big success. Or maybe you had some really big success, like you moved to a new home or started a new relationship or something like this. It's a good time to celebrate these things. Maybe have some sort of dessert or treat or do something to celebrate and feel like it is a celebratory time. You don't have to wait for the holidays or the birthdays or the big events. You can do it every full moon. I think it's a great time to celebrate life. Every day, why not? So then we'll look ahead beyond this week until Friday to next week on Saturday, January 27th. We will have all planets going direct. If you're watching the video, look at that. No retrogrades. Wonderful thing to see. And that will be mostly until May 3rd. But as I mentioned before, in April there will be a Mercury retrograde. So mostly all the planetary energies moving forward for a few months. So a strong sense of potential. Great time for anything you want to start and begin. And I talked about this a lot in recent episodes. You can check that out if you're interested in this. But it's a really cool transit. Happens fairly regularly, but when it's here, it's a great time to work with it and start things, move forward, take action, get stuff done. Next, on Monday, January 29th, we have Venus in Ashada. So you see it move from Mula Nakshatra. Talked about all the depths of relationships and getting to the root of the issue. And lots of deep insights coming through this. Just talked to a friend today while we're in this Venus and Mula time, where she just had this sudden download, like shortly after Venus moved into Mula, that all this clarity, all these insights about her relationships, about her love life, just suddenly coming through. You know, this kind of things can happen when you are really synced up with the energies of nature, of the astronomy and astrology, and you feel these big shifts, these waves come sometimes right when the transit happens, sometimes a little bit before. But we see now Venus moving into Ashada, and this is a passionate and harmonious energy, great for these kind of interactions and relationships where you bring more passion and desire of what you want to create into the relationship. A good time to focus on shared values and deeper emotional connection in the relationship. Ashada is this strong energy that can achieve what it wants. The symbol of the elephant of Ashada is strong, present, and can achieve what it wants and move forward. It's hard to stop an elephant, right? So when you have Venus here, whatever you desire, whatever you want in relationship, your love life, your passion, your artistic expression has this strong, driven energy. And it's a good time for any sort of creative and artistic pursuits, enjoying anything sensual and following your desire. So like you have the sudden desire to just go out and get ice cream. And maybe it doesn't fit perfectly in your diet, but you trust that. And then maybe you go out and then you run into an old friend and then it leads to this other thing and so on. I think there's a lot of wisdom in these intuitions, and to be able to distinguish and discern if that's an intuition from like your true self, your higher self, that's in your greater good, or a sort of overriding of your intuition that's from like some pattern or some thing, or like, you know, if you eat a bag of chips, like you just start eating a couple and you can stop easily, but after a certain point it's harder to stop, and these foods are made to be addictive. And I'm sure we've all experienced this at times where you're eating some sort of junk food or something and it gets to a point where it's like you're not even really hungry anymore, but you're not satisfied, and you just keep going. And that's like basically the opposite of your intuition. That's sort of, your own intuition has been overridden now by sensorial experience. And this is what so much of the Eastern philosophy is about, is like not being a slave to your senses. Like, oh, that tastes good, it feels good on my tongue, I want more and more and more. Or that feels good to my touch, to be with this person or to have this experience, and you want more and more and more. But you go past the point of actually feeling fulfilled and nourished, or you are losing touch with your intuition to know where that is. So it's a thing to watch out for here, like an elephant, where you're riding an elephant, and at a certain point it can have its own momentum and be unstoppable in a bad way. And you can take your senses in all sorts of directions. And in philosophical, sort of psychological circles, there's this idea of the rider and the elephant. Like, the rider is our conscious mind that's like saying, I'm going to go here, I'm going to be productive today, I'm going to do this. But our subconscious is the elephant that is like, well, actually, no, you're not going to get out of bed. Or no, you're going to keep eating those chips. Or no, you're not going to make that change that you said you wanted to make. because there's this stronger force within us that hasn't been addressed. And while Venus is still in Mula before this, it's a good time to address those deeper subconscious patterns and observe them, and just seeing them is enough to start to change them. If you notice, like if you say you have a habit of smoking or something, and you notice every time you eat dinner, you end up wanting a cigarette and you crave a cigarette, but you want to quit smoking. So you notice where the whole pattern is. Oh, it's after dinner. That's where the pattern starts. You can replace smoking with any behavior or pattern that you might want to change. You notice where it started, and you get to the root of it and the triggers of it. Now that awareness is enough to start to change it. And when we get to Purva Ashada, it's great to have that awareness of those things uprooted, just like weeding a garden. Like you get the weeds out at the root, and now you've taken care of it. So you go to Purva Ashada, you can focus on just growing the things you do want in the garden, and having the things you do want, and not letting these weeds take over because you didn't get to the root of it. Before January 29th, get to the root of the emotional, relational issues. And then after January 29th, you've got strong momentum to move forward in anything that you want in relationships. And have this discernment of like true desire and your highest good versus this sort of overridden desire that is actually not in your highest good. Maybe it's addiction, maybe it's just consumptive nature or whatever. Just some pattern running out, some trauma being replayed, whatever. You've hopefully gotten under some roots of that. So now you have more choice, and all that elephant energy is driven towards what you really do want. And of course, there's a potential for overindulgence or unrealistic expectations, particularly in relationships during this transit. Starting January 29th for 11 days of Venus and Purva Ashada. So beware of overindulgence. Yeah, follow your desire, follow your senses, but know when you're done. Maybe your desire is to go get ice cream, but you only actually wanted like 3 bites, not the whole serving. And actually have the honesty with your desire, right? It's not really even discipline. It's like actually listening to your desire of like, okay, you actually had enough, you're done. Or if you go out with friends, you go to some social event and it's like 4 hours, but you actually feel done after like an hour. And that's not about discipline or being strict really or cold. It's actually honoring your desire, like where you're at, of like there's something in you that says this is enough. And again, maybe you go home early and you leave, or you end this thing before you thought you maybe should have, and that leads to some greater insight or clarity or better decision or something like this. We never know. But I think there's a lot of wisdom in our intuition and how that expresses in the desires we have in life. And then finally, next week we have January 29th, Mercury in Uttara Ashada. So we see all the planets in Purva Ashada during that Venus transit I just mentioned on 29th, but then it moves shortly later after that, where Mercury now moves into Uttara Ashada a few hours later. So the Ashadas are similar energies, both symbols of the elephant, both the strong, driven, directed energy. But Uttara Ashada is this later success. So the things you do now from January 29th for 9 days, maybe setting yourself up in relationships and communication and business matters for later successes. Good time for strategic and communication and effective communication in professional matters. Thinking long-term, planning things out again. Good to be goal-oriented and think practically, as the buddhi, the intellect of Mercury. Sanskrit Mercury is buddhi, intellect. So a good time for using your practical thinking for what you want to create long-term. There can be positive interactions in organizational and leadership roles. If you are in organizations and corporate world, or running a business or leading a business, this is great for long-term strategic thinking, great for January to planning out the next year. And there could be a tendency to be overly focused on tasks and neglect interpersonal aspects. Again, this is a driven, focused energy, and it's quite practical. And especially when it gets to Saturn, or to Capricorn rather, in the second half of this 9 days, it'll be much more about long-term strategic thinking. The first half of this, January 29th, for a couple of days, it's more like the big picture idea and the dreams and dreaming big and what do you really want in life. And then the second half of these 9 days from January 29th is now laying the groundwork, laying the groundwork, the foundation of what you want to put in place. What are the strategies? How are you going to do it? Who are you going to connect with? What technology you're going to use? Setting up your technology, your phone, your computers, your tablets, whatever, so that you can be successful in the long term with your vision. So that's our look at the next 2 weeks. And then again, the next Friday forecast, we'll talk about February. So a quick little review. Again, we said Saturday, January 20th, Mercury moved into Ashada for 9 days. It's a good time for strategic, big picture thinking about your plans and your business and your life and your finances. And then on Wednesday, January 24th, the sun in Shravana for 13 days. A good time for deep learning and introspection and self-inquiry. Also a good time for listening to others and having deep, thoughtful conversations with others. And then on Thursday, January 25th, we had the full moon in Pushya in Cancer, a culmination of emotional and personal growth, heightened intuition, great day for personal insights and meditative practices and nurturing relationships. And then the following week on Saturday, January 27th, all planets direct until May 3rd, except for Mercury retrograde going in April. So a great time starting January 27th for a few months to just take action, start things, move things forward, entrepreneurial thinking, starting stuff, creating stuff, powerful energy. And then on January 29th, on Monday, Venus in Ashada, a great time for relationships, getting clear on values and vision and big picture vision of the relationship and pursuing your desires and your intuition in an intentional way. And then on Monday, January 29th, Mercury in Uttara Ashada for 9 days. Good time for thinking big picture about your business and finances, and then laying the groundwork, putting the foundation in place to take action and make that a reality in 2024. So if you found this helpful, again, you can check out your free birth chart, your free Vedic birth chart at quietmindastrology.com. And by getting that, you'll also be signed up to get the free Friday forecast, where I send out these emails with these notes and exclusive notes and offers I won't share anywhere else except on those Friday forecasts. And you can also go to quietmindastrology.com to join the waitlist for the Vedic Astrology Mentorship Year 1. And this is where I teach you all about signs, planets, houses, and nakshatras to understand yourself and others on a much deeper level. Life-changing stuff. I love sharing this. Super excited to jump into the next class very soon. And you can join the waitlist right now at quietmindastrology.com. If you enjoyed the podcast, take a moment to leave a review, share it with a friend. Astrology is more fun with friends. You can share each other's birth info, compare notes, do little mini readings for each other as you try to learn astrology. And if you want to really get into learning it, the mentorship is where I share all about that, coming up soon. So thank you for listening, and look forward to sharing more with you next time on the Quiet Mind Astrology podcast.